welcome back. It is my pleasure today to introduce you all to Darrian's mentor, Ray Chandler Io. She is the Vaivaiola Hawaiian Islands Director. In this position, Ray works with state and federal agencies such as the Department of Health, the County of Hawaii, the Environmental Protection Agency to facilitate water quality monitoring, research, as well as implement pathways to preserving fishable, swimmable, and drinkable waters. The work of Ray has been remarkable, and it is my pleasure to have her take the mic.
Mahalo. Can you hear me? Yay, okay. It is my great honor and pleasure to introduce Darrian Sky Kahealani Muraoka. Darrian comes from the small westernmost community of Kekaha, Kauai. Her motivations are coastal communities such as Kekaha and Keaukaha, and teaching our younger generations of Hawaii residents about modern watershed issues within our coastal regions, including coral bleaching, watershed health, and coastal climate change, while bridging Pono science and Aloha Aina. She graduated with her Bachelor's of Science in Marine Science from California State University, Monterey Bay, and she is a Master's of Science student in the Tropical Conservation Biology and Environmental Science program at the University of Hawaii at Hilo. Within her graduate program, Darrian has interned with Vaivaiola Waterkeepers Hawaiian Islands, where she has learned how to sample for water quality in both Hilo and Kona, conducted outreach and education with local Hilo High School organizations and community organizations, and collaborated with the County of Hawaii to hold a storm drain stenciling campaign to bring awareness to the surface water runoff pollution in Hilo Bay. Her goal is to inspire our younger generation to learn more about coastal and ocean issues and what we can do within our communities to provide solutions for modern watershed issues and preserve our culture by creating a nonprofit that is dedicated to the people. Please join me in welcoming Darrian. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Ray and Lisa. Aloha kako. My name is Darrian Muraoka. I am from Kekaha, Kauai, and today I'll be presenting to you my experience in the Tropical Conservation Biology and Environmental Science graduate program internship track through my presentation titled Flowing Through the Watershed, the Impacts, Outreach, and Future of Surface Water Runoff in Hilo, Hawaii. Before we start, I wanted to give an overview of what I'll be talking about today. I'll be providing my personal background of myself, moving into Hilo's past and present, the waters of Hilo, giving a brief introduction to Vaivaiola Waterkeepers Hawaiian Islands, the project created together and our approach, the actions and deliverables produced through this project, bringing it back to my graduate internship experience within the TCBES program, and closing our time together with a big mahalo. Some housekeeping I'd like to point out is if a picture, video, or graphic was taken by someone else, they will be photo credited throughout this presentation. All other photos were taken by me. Mary Kavena Pukui starts off the book Olelo no Eao, Hawaiian Proverbs and Sayings with Ele kau ele ho ilo I ke aloha, meaning love is everlasting. I firmly believe that it is my ohana, community, and lahui that continues to adorn me with love to grow in many ways in my life. I was born and raised in a Lawai'a household in Kekaha, Kauai, and Kekaha is known as the place, and the way of life has influenced my views and perspectives. Being I was surrounded by water, I knew I wanted to pursue education in marine science. I wanted to learn more about freshwater systems, specifically in Hawaii, and entering the TCBES program showed me an array of routes within coastal water quality, environmental policy, and also professional courses and club activities. Through many rigorous graduate courses, not only did I get to know my professors, but also my peers that were in and outside of the program. A lot of them became ohana. So with this ka'au or journey and striving for what I'd like to help the people and places who helped me grow and gave their aloha, I'd like to say mahalo, ele kau ele ho'oilo I ke aloha. I'd like to acknowledge there were many parts of this project that I will be presenting on that were touched by various places within Hilo. Therefore, I would like to give my warmest aloha and mahalo to Hilo, the Kaia'ulu or community, Wahipana, meaning celebrated or historical landmarks. Ele ele Hilo Ponopono I Ka'ua. There were many olelo no eau that talk about the reign of Hilo. This specific one talks about Hilo is always rainy, setting our story in a place that has changed significantly over the years, from native Hawaiian fishing villages to the plantation era, and molding the town of Hilo that we have today. Hilo evolved from a productive farming and fishing wahi into an industrial leader of sugar plantation within the 1800s. Downtown Hilo was built around Hilo Bay, and since then, the county has managed the island primarily by dividing resources between the two most populated sides, Kailua Kona and Hilo. By 1874, Hilo ranked as the second largest population center in the islands, which brought in whalers, sugar production, and exportation to keep up with the growing number of people. Many cesspools were created during this time. The Waiakea Mill Company had thousands of acres of cultivated fields and established its mill operation at Wailoa Pond until the 1940s. Hilo Bay was still unprotected from high winds and storm surges that caused ships to break loose from their moorings and risk grounding, and it was demanded that there be more protection and support from the wave action. The breakwall started construction in 1908 and was completed in 1929 and extended roughly halfway across the bay with 10,080 feet. The breakwater was not built as a tsunami protection barrier for Hilo, and as a result, the 1946 and 1960 tsunamis generated by earthquakes overtopped the breakwater, and Hilo sustained significant damage. Another big production was the Kainik, which also used inorganic arsenic to produce drywall ceilings and wallboards. In the early 1930s, Hilo Cane Productions Ltd. established a fiberboard manufacturing plant along the banks of Waiakea Pond. Hawaiian cane products was sold to the Flint Coat Company in 1948, which continued to operate the Kainik plant until about 1960. Kainik was treated with inorganic arsenic compounds as an anti-termite agent, but was released into Wailoa Pond, which flowed into Hilo Bay and was trapped by the breakwater. Since the plantation era, there's many impacts to water quality that are affecting the waters of Hilo Bay. We have stormwater runoff from urban and agricultural sources, discharge from municipal and industrial facilities, on-site disposal systems related to wastewater, pollutants from household yards, and a lack of public awareness and education. Having a population of approximately 45,000 and counting, Hilo is the largest city on Mokuo Keawe. However, since transitioning out of the plantation era, there are still relatively many agricultural plots and residences. Like our Olelo no Eau talks about, Hilo is always raining, and it stands to be true. With rain, a lot of sediment and pollution runoff is pushed from the upper reaches of the Hilo watershed through Hilo town, while surpassing residential homes, businesses, and agriculture. Pollution and sediment then flows into Honoli'i, Wailuku, and Wailoa rivers via road runoff, through storm drains, or leached through cesspools. This pollution is ultimately stuck in Hilo Bay, and this is because the infrastructure of the breakwall doesn't allow for pollution to exit the bay, and with this, the pollution settles into sediment, slowly changing the bay's ecosystem. With numerous effects within the watershed, there is a concern for this process of runoff pollution. So stormwater runoff comes from many sources. As a result of our island having a young geology, Hilo experiences intense runoff. Through our project, we got in contact with Andrew Hara, a National Geographic visual media specialist and certified drone pilot, to capture our vision of expressing stormwater runoff in Honoli'i, Wailuku, and Wailoa rivers during a big rain event. Through powerful visuals, we could show the public and the county the flow of water from Upper Mauka to Lower Makai reaches. This was important to film because not only did we get some powerful visuals of the flow of water, but also traced potential sources of pollutants from urban, agriculture, or a mix of both. So for example, here we have Honoli'i. We can see this via the state land use ArcGIS map provided by the State of Hawaii website. The lower reaches are surrounded by rural and conservation areas. However, the upper reaches of Honoli'i are agriculture and part of the land use that surrounds the river. So in this video of the mouth of Honoli'i, a very amazing place to hit a nalu or surf. This is after a big rainstorm event. We don't see much of a bay or the river mouth that holds the river in and creates a beach. We see a change to watercolor in the river to ocean, a large open mouth, and a pretty small lineup. From this visual, we can start to understand what is being brought down from the upper reaches. Many times there are huge trees or logs floating down the river and out into the bay, making it unsafe for both surfers, paddlers, and also nearby boaters. In Wailuku, the area's land use changes to agriculture conservation along the riverside and urban-rural development. With this map, we can already see the potential of these rural areas having an effect of adding to pollutants via storm drains or runoff from the roads into the rivers that flow into Hilo Bay. So within this video, we are on the Wailuku River, looking right over Waianuenue Falls during a big rain event. The power of water is ever so present here, and we can see rural residences, businesses, and agriculture plots that could be leaching non-point source pollution into Wailuku, and also a pocket of trees right here in the base of the waterfall. Last, we have Wailoa, which is heavily surrounded by urban and rural land use. Because of this, Wailoa faces not only legacy pollution from the plantation era and the use of arsenic, but also pollutants that are flowing now. So here we can see the presence of urban and rural land use on Wailoa River. We see a lot of residential areas and businesses still sitting on the banks and around Wailoa River, which can tell us where non-point source pollution is coming from. We would like to make these visuals available to the public to see via our nonprofit's website and for the county to use as an awareness tool to talk about broader issues. This could be for adhering to groundwater advisories, observing surface water runoff, and minimizing coastal erosion. And videos like these will help us with face-to-face outreach booths, conversations with our county, and informing our state and federal government about these impacts. So why is this a concern? While we saw in the drone clips, the rivers gravitate towards Hilo Bay, gathering pollutants on its way down. The pollution settles in the sediment in Hilo Bay, which then becomes the food particulates for Hilo's marine flora and fauna. If caught via shoreline fishing, diving, or bycatch, fishers may not take into consideration the effect of runoff pollution that may be in their catch. This includes high arsenic, lead, mercury levels, or even microplastics. Also, the algae in the bay filters these toxins into themselves, which is another source of food for protected species such as turtles and for fish that are again caught by fishermen and women. We also have discharge from municipal and industrial facilities. The water quality in this area is especially compromised by a variety of municipal pollution sources, which have all been seen. It has brought to our attention that the discharge is found on the coastline where recreational activities occur. There is only one municipal sewage treatment facility in the Hilo district, and it is located on Keaukaha's waterfront. Many accessible beaches are within Keaukaha as well, and these beaches have been closed multiple times in recent years because of high levels of bacteria, wastewater discharge, and sewage spills issued by the Department of Health. According to Hawaii County and Hawaii News Now, the Hilo water treatment facility needs $100 million to replace the facility, or it could trigger an environmental disaster. meaning 3 million gallons of sewage a day would be dispersed via the outflow pipe here and into major swimming, fishing, and gathering areas. Just last month, it was reported by Big Island News Now and the Hawaii Department of Health that 2.2 million gallons of wastewater discharge closed beaches from Puhi Bay all the way to Onekahakaha. Another concern is the leaching of cesspools and sewer systems into the bay. In 2017, the state Hawaii legislation passed Act 125, which mandates that all cesspools in Hawaii will need to be updated, converted, or closed by January 2050. Cesspools were created during the plantation era in order to organize solid waste and used water. However, many cesspools, especially found within homes on the coastline, have been observed to be leaching out into water sources such as rivers and the ocean or percolating in the groundwater system. With just 30 years away from the act becoming final, there has been little to no awareness for the public about the switch, and many Hawaii homeowners cannot afford it, especially in rural Hilo. The leaching of cesspools not only affects marine life and ecosystems, but also causes health risks for recreators, fishermen, and families that utilize ocean resources within this area. So we learned about the pollutants from non-point sources, but pollutants coming from the household are very apparent too. There are still people who use storm drains to dump coolant, oil, pesticides, and debris. These types of pollutants do make it to the treatment facility or are filtered back into one of the 3 rivers and carried into Hilo Bay. Also, people have recreate and fish and gather at these coastlines, and many residents are familiar with legacy pollution and know how much the rain can change the area. However, there still needs to be a push in letting the public know about brown water advisories, future wastewater discharge, and the process of drinking to sewage water and the long-term health effects of it. Knowing these pollutants are impairing the waters of Hilo Bay and surrounding recreational areas, Waiwaiola Waterkeepers Hawaiian Islands extended to create the Hilo Bay Waterkeeper to work with the Environmental Protection Agency and Hawaii County in finding solutions. The goal of the Waterkeepers, in which Waiwaiola Hawaiian Islands adopted, was a goal within the Clean Water Act of 1972. To this day, the water quality goals stated by Congress in the Clean Water Act have not been achieved by the Environmental Protection Agency. These included important dates and decisions, such as all U.S. waters being fishable and swimmable by 1983, zero water pollution discharge by 1985, and prohibiting the discharge of toxic amounts of pollutants. More than half of U.S. waters, rivers, lakes, ponds, and reservoirs are continuing to violate set water quality standards. However, since the passing of the Clean Water Act, the levels of pollution has significantly decreased. But the Clean Water Act has a long way to go in order to meet its initial goals and intentions, therefore creating a mission for the Waterkeeper Alliance, which works heavily with the EPA. My internship with Waiwaiola Waterkeepers Hawaiian Islands was in full effect on September 21st, 2020. I was really appreciative of Ray as we were in the beginning of the pandemic and everything was very uncertain. So through this internship, we met via phone and Zoom calls through communication, and I learned about the work of the organization and where I'd fit into the role of the Hilo Bay Waterkeeper. We then established major actions we could take together during the term of the TCBES program. These major actions included outreach and education to small groups during the pandemic, water quality sampling, and monitoring sites identified in Hilo. So before we get into the outreach section, I felt compelled to continue with the Olelo no Eao in Hilo and how they fit into this project. This reads, Hana ma'ole ka'ua o Hilo, instead of anything that goes on and on like the pouring rain. And I felt like this, with outreach, we continue to go on and on, just like the pouring rain. It doesn't just stop at this project. It will continue more in the future. Educational outreach was my favorite, as I got to talk story with community members, volunteer at places I have never been to, and create meaningful connections with people and places. With this part of the project, I initiated a storm drain stenciling campaign, helped in collaborative efforts with other nonprofit organizations, and worked with amazing students. So Vaivaiola Waterkeepers Hawaiian Islands was selected by one of the Hawaiian Electric Industries employees to be a recipient of a grant contribution, and Vaivaiola used this generous support to design and produce environmental education materials for Keiki about point and non-point source pollution and impacts to our nearshore waters. Through this grant, Vaivaiola Waterkeepers Hawaiian Islands produced worksheets for students ages 5 through 12. The first worksheet is a crossword puzzle. The puzzle helps to educate students about the beneficial ecosystem services that native oysters provide and raise awareness about to protect fishable, swimmable, drinkable waters. The second worksheet is a word search and coloring sheet. It contains information about 5 things kids can do to reduce pollution flowing towards the ocean. Because Vaivaiola Waterkeepers Hawaiian Islands is a statewide organization, over 2,255 marine-themed conservation messages and environmental education papers went out. I was instrumental in delivering 300 copies to students on Kauai via the Kauai County Department of Parks and Recreation, and 80 copies to students in Hilo on Hawaiʻi Island. As the pandemic was severe, I could only work with low numbers of students and volunteers, and for this reason, I took action to do a public awareness campaign on storm drains. With the Department of Public Works, we created steps to planning, and this took months. After establishing a county map with the Department of Public Works, we confirmed drainages with the county circled here as accurate places within Hilo where the storm drains do lead to nearby rivers or out into Hilo Bay. After finalizing a permit with Hawaii County Department of Public Works, I chose January 2022 to March 2022 to survey each permitted storm drain and use this as my first round of stenciling for the water runoff awareness campaign. I then took Waiakea High School students to downtown Hilo to take pictures of the storm drains before stenciling and to survey where it was, if it recently collected any pollution. And then we planned with volunteers from Hilo and Waiakea High School the best routes to stencil, preparing students to stencil by coming to their classrooms and giving presentations about water quality in Hilo Bay and to join us for the stenciling part of the campaign. Altogether, we analyzed approximately 60 storm drains that led into Hilo Bay and nearby water sources, and surveyed and stenciled 40 of them. For Waiakea, because of the pandemic, after-school activities needed to be off campus, so I took 4 students to stencil the storm drains around the county building. The Hilo High School group was a little larger as they're an alternative learning school called Lanakila Learning Center, and I took 12 students to downtown Hilo, which made the stenciling and surveys a lot quicker. I assigned student roles as students to watch for oncoming traffic, students to survey the storm drains, and students to stencil the storm drains. I collaborated with Keaukaha Community Group Hui Ho'ole Mauluo and the Lanakila Learning Center to teach students about water quality within the fish pond and how to create opportunities for pono science. Through these important conversations, I conducted workshops with high school students born and raised in the community to help them learn the importance of water and what is happening within the Hilo watershed in regards to human-induced pollution. So this is what our day kind of looked like. We started our day off with protocol, paying our respects, and talking about what we were going to do that day. We then used the time to kilo, connect with place, interactions within the environment. And then we also did pH and turbidity. So I taught the students how to take water samples. And we ended off our day with holo holo to catch fish and also take tissue samples of those fish. I tested out these kilo worksheets in a booklet I made for each student to learn more about the places they were in, different types of flora and fauna, and how our quality of data from our perspectives will assist with the quantitative data from the turbidity and pH of ponds that we collected from. After presenting the results from the students' findings to Hui Ho'ole Malu'o, they asked for these booklets for Hilo, and we explored other things that the pond could be tested for, such as enterococci bacteria, sucralose, and optical brighteners. We are in the process of exploring these options together. After our testing, we holo and caught different types of fish found in the pond. We caught mullet, o'opu, and tilapia. With the mullet and invasive tilapia, we opened up the stomach content to see what the fish were eating. And then we took tissue samples to analyze in the lab to look for any traces of metals. We gave the fish to the students and their family to eat that night, and they said it was really, really good. This will add to the baseline data for Kaumaui to see if these ponds are able to raise fish stocks. For Earth Week 2022, Vaivaiola collaborated with Kanu Hawaiʻi, Southwest Airlines, and Ace Hardware on a project to get community members to go to their local Ace Hardware and form bubbles with family members to clean up their communities, parks, or beaches. Pictured on the left is the boxes we had set up at each Ace Hardware on Hawaiʻi Island, which came with informational packets on how to get active for Earth Day, the importance of realizing our impact on our watershed, and the flow of water and pollutants from Mauka to Makai. With these packets came 10 trash bags and 10 glove pairs, and we distributed over 300 informational packets with the intent that people would create their COVID-friendly bubbles to clean up their communities on Earth Day. While that was distributed, we also collaborated with Juan Espinal from Maestro's Vibe, Hawaii's first educational podcast established in 2018. Maestro's Vibe is run by DOE teachers who interview meaningful education stakeholders about best teaching practices, local experts, and lifting the education profession for families to get involved with policymaking or wanting to learn more about what's going on locally. My mentor, Ray, and I aired on episode 75, where we talked about the detriments of pollution in our water and how we pollute in many ways unconsciously. I talked about our responsibility as citizens and water stewards and what we can do to get involved. On the morning of Earth Day, we invited Hilo community members and local government officials to chant Eala'e and bring in the morning. We also had Mayor Mitch Roth and Ashley Kirkowitz, which is a county council member from District 4, read their proclamation of Earth Day for Hawaiʻi Island. After this, we thanked everyone and had time to talk with the mayor about our storm drains. We also talked about future steps to take with this project. With our community members, we did our coastal cleanup from the grandstand in Hilo Town and around Bayfront. With many hours of planning, executing, and accomplishing educational outreach, I feel so happy that through the internship with Vaivaiola, I could start the talks about our drainage systems and impaired waters, and next steps with our community and local government officials. This next session, I wanted to start with an Olelo no Eau to continue the conversation about Hilo water. Inu vai koli'uli'u o Hilo, meaning the rain of Hilo is a chief source of drinking water. Knowing that Hilo was infamous for having infinite amounts of water, it is important to not only talk about Hilo Bay's impaired waters, but also be a part of the study through water quality sampling and monitoring. So the other side of the project is water quality monitoring in sites created by Vaivaiola waterkeepers. We tested from our sites at the headwaters of Hilo rivers, a site nestled by the harbor and Suisun, and the shore of Puhi Bay, near the outflow pipe and in the beginning of Keaukaha. What were we testing? Well, we did surface water temperature and turbidity. Turbidity to see how suspended the particles of sediment were in the water, meaning we were trying to see the clarity of the water within Hilo Bay. With turbidity, we also took surface temperature water with our samples to know if temperature was a factor in the turbidity after a rain event. We also tested for metals such as arsenic, lead, and cadmium. We tested specifically for inorganic arsenic, as this type of metal was spilled into Hilo Bay via the Canex factory and added to the legacy pollution within the bay. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, exposure to this type of metal in drinking water is associated with skin disorders and increased risks of diabetes, high blood pressure, and several types of cancer. We also tested for lead, and lead can be found in paint, fish sinkers, or catchment systems. They're also found to have traces from everyday jobs such as home renovations, auto repair, electrical work, or melting lead. Exposure to high levels of lead can cause anemia, kidney, and brain damage, or even death, according to the Center of Disease Control. The last metal we tested for was cadmium. This metal can flow from road runoff, through car brake pads, or the burning of fossil fuels. Health risks from the inhalation of cadmium can have adverse effects on humans, such as bronchitis or chemical pneumonitis, according to the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. And then, of course, we had to talk about optical brighteners, sucralose, and we also did our fish samples. So optical brighteners and sucralose were not tested in the bay. However, I did work with the Kona waterkeeper, Dr. Rick Bennett, to learn about these types of testing. So we tested for surface temperature 6 months apart in 2021 at each site, except for site 5, which was only tested in March. Here we can see the consistency of surface water temperatures. So turbidity at the headwaters of the river and from the 2 shore sites were below 15 nephelometric turbidity units, or NTU, which is great as rivers during these 2 periods are usually less than 10 NTU according to the US Geological Survey standard. However, the one site above 10 NTU may have been during a rain event where particles from the surrounding land are washed into the river, making the water muddy brown colors or indicating water that has high turbidity values. So this sediment can easily be stirred up and suspended material in the stream beds and causing the high turbidity number. The technique used for water quality samples and fish samples was inductively coupled plasma optical emission spectrometry, or ICP-OES. This technique was commercially available since 1974, and thanks to its reliability, multi-element options, and high throughput, it has become widely applied in both routine water quality research. The solution to analyze is conducted by a peristaltic pump through a nebulizer and into a spray chamber. The produced aerosol is led into an argon plasma, and plasma is the 4th state of matter next to solid, liquid, and gaseous states. So in the ICP-OES, the plasma is generated at the end of the quartz torch by a cooled induction coil through high frequencies alternating current flows. In the torch, dissolvation, atomization, and ionization of the sample takes place. Due to the thermic energy taken up by the electrons, they reach a higher excited state. When the electrons drop back to ground level energy, it's liberated as light. We tested this for arsenic, lead, and cadmium. Each element has its own characteristic emission spectrum, and that is measured through the spectrometer. The light intensity of the wavelength is measured, and with the calibration, calculated into concentration. So with this, we tested for arsenic, lead, and cadmium from October to December 2021. We also found that we were within the accepted quality control range within the analytical lab standards. And so for this month, we had little to no traces of all 3, arsenic, lead, and cadmium. The same went for November 2021, where we were within the accepted quality control range for each 3 elements. And lastly, in December 2021, the same our actual quality control were within the accepted range as well. For our fish samples, we had a range of mullet, o'opu, and tilapia. And with the mullet and invasive tilapia, we opened up the stomach content to see what the fish were eating and took the gills, guts, and gonads samples to analyze in the lab. We gave the fish to the students again, and they said it was really good. And so with the process of doing this, we processed the fish samples. I took them as frozen, so we took them as wet weights, and then I put them into the oven at the analytical lab for 2 to 3 weeks. And then they came out like this, and I got their dry weights. I then chopped these dry samples into thin and fine pieces so they were ready for processing. Through adding acids with these pieces of the samples, we were ready for the analysis machine, which uses the ICP-OES technique. Here we tested for traces of arsenic, which did not appear in these samples. You can see here the quality control that we had was in the accepted range of the ICP-OES technique. For each type of fish we sampled, we did not find high traces of arsenic. These are important tests to learn as it links toward preliminary research into fish consumption, hazards, and risks surrounding Hilo Bay, and take the next step in carefully communicating this to community members. Once we do start taking samples outside of the internship, we will be adding our findings to the Waiʻi website. So I chose this Olelo no Eau to describe my next section of my experiences that serves as my actions and deliverables within the TCBES program. Hau ke aho I ke kahawai lau o Hilo. With my mentor, I learned how to write for my first source of funding, which was the Kulana no I'i Award. From there, I took the initiative to help write and writing important documents to the Waiʻi board, such as our annual report for the nonprofit. I was also very fortunate to travel with Keaholoa STEM scholars as a graduate mentor and share the Waiʻi Waterkeeper project with students and faculty from all over Pacifica in Guam during the Lewis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation meeting. I was fortunate to talk with students about their communities and water quality issues, as well as the issues they face with climate change. During the summer of 2022, I was a graduate mentor for the PIPES program, Pacific Internship Program for Exploring Science. For one of our huaka'i, we traveled to Miloli'i and learned about their way of life and water quality issues. We then got the opportunity to test their water quality and add to their data set. A couple of weeks after Guam, I was fortunate enough to board the Nautilus as a seafloor mapper with 3 native Hawaiian students. Not only did I learn how to map the seafloor, but I also learned how to use an instrument called the UCTD, or Underway Conductivity Temperature Depth. This takes data of the ocean at depths up to 200 meters. Learning how to take measurements of water quality would be helpful to employ on land or coastal areas. With mapping the seafloor, we as students are working with the Native Hawaiian Working Group in their nomenclature meetings to give Hawaiian names to the seamounts that have previously been mapped. We're hoping to have set names by 2023. After the expedition, I was hired as the Marine Protected Species Program Outreach and Education Associate for Hawaiʻi Island. With working in the government, I can help broader communities such as ones I visited as a student and continue learning about water quality. With learning the techniques for optical brighteners from Dr. Rick, the Division of Aquatic Resources hopes to test for optical brighteners, and I am excited to learn more about the techniques STAR will use to take in order to test these. During the Ankyline Pond Symposium, I learned how to use the UCTD again during a field trip with scientists from Italy and Canada who will help to look at the water systems flowing on the south side of Hawaiʻi Island. My graduate studies at the University of Hawaii at Hilo internship and my internship with Waiʻi Waterkeepers Hawaiian Islands has suited me with the ability to continue learning about longevity of runoff pollution and how to manage with best practices. outreach, and education. I am grateful for the opportunity to teach and learn from my Hilo community, being a part of the bigger picture in telling a story about our water and the roles it plays in our coastal ecosystem that has given me insight needed to continue this kuleana through citizen science, outreach efforts, and the way I recreate in Hilo waters. Following this experience that the TCBES program has given me, I will continue to help with water quality efforts, and I hope to have the opportunity to educate the public a lot more. Overall, this project has progressed immensely, and it wouldn't have been made possible without the help, hands, ike of many. And I want to thank you for your time and take questions that you have. Mahalo for listening, and I would like to also acknowledge the Tropical Conservation Biology and Environmental Science program. Mahalo for the skills that have helped me to improve both professionally and personally within my life. I would like to acknowledge my advisor, Lisa Canale, for being one of the biggest supporters, helping to make sure I stay on the right path of the internship, making herself available when I needed assistance, and able to adapt to my internship within the past 2 years through the pandemic. I would like to also acknowledge my mentor, Rhiannon Ray Chandler Iao, for her courage, knowledge, and passion for VI and people. Throughout my 2 years in this internship, she has been there for me both in professional and personal life, and taking her experiences and helping me paint a bigger picture for water conservation in the islands and for our island nation people. I would also like to acknowledge my second mentor, Dr. Rick Bennett, whom I had the pleasure of learning from these past 2 years. His passion for his home waters and surf breaks in Kona have truly inspired me to be a better steward for our coastlines, and he has taught me how to actively collaborate with the public and government agencies. I would last like to thank my Ohanan community. Thank you for always helping me to strive for my goals while also remembering my roots. Also, I would like to thank Hui Ho'ole Maluo, the Hilo community, Lanakila Learning Center, Waiakea High School, the Kulano no I'i Board, the TCBES program, Pacific Internship Program for Exploring Science, Keaholoa STEM Scholars, Alulike, Ocean Exploration Trust, and the County of Hawaiʻi. Mahalo, and I would like to take any questions that you have.
All right, thank you so much, Darrian. We do have time for one question. So if you have a question, please just speak now. Okay, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Whitney, and that is, what advice would you give to someone who was interested in doing graduate study about water quality?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for someone that is looking to go into the TCBES internship program, or also looking to do a thesis with water quality, I would just always remember why you would like to go into this, why VI is so important to our people and within our islands in Hawaii, and also learn different types of techniques that is available at UH Hilo within our county and also within our state and environmental protection agencies.